Hi everyone, this is Fabi here, and in today's video we are going to compare the camera of the iPhone 14 Pro Max with that of the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Now, a lot of people on YouTube compare the camera of the latest iPhone with the iPhone from last generation, and I feel like that's not really relevant for most people, as most of us upgrade every 2 years or maybe even 3 years. So let's see the difference between these cameras, and right now I'm filming on the front-facing camera of the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and I got pretty shaky hands, so you can also see how the stabilization works. And this is the front-facing camera of the iPhone 12 Pro Max. So can you tell the difference already? Well, let's jump into the video, and by the end of it, hopefully we'll have a good idea of what the differences are between these two cameras. Okay, we'll start off with the main camera, where the differences are honestly small. In bright daylight, the only difference is the fact that the iPhone 14 Pro Max produces a slightly warmer picture, which looks more appealing to my eye, though sometimes I do prefer the cooler look of the 12 Pro Max. This is a trend I've noticed though. 2 years ago I compared the camera on the 12 mini with that on the 11, and the 12 mini was warmer than the 11. Now the 14 Pro Max is even warmer than the 12 series. Keep in mind that I'm not using any of the photographic styles you can apply to images on the 13 or 14 series iPhones. One of the things that has slightly disappointed me is that the extra megapixels, which are binned down to 12 megapixels, don't really add a lot more detail into the images. Edges are usually sharper in images produced by the 14 Pro Max, but this is due to extra sharpening going on in Apple's processing. After a quick message from today's sponsor, PCBWay, we'll take a look at night mode with the main camera. Special thanks to PCBWay, which is a one-stop shop for all your PCB prototyping, 3D printing, and CNC machining needs. Click the link in the description to buy 5 PCBs with 2 to 4 day shipping for under $30. If you have an idea for a new product or already have everything developed, PCBWay offers complete manufacturing services, from producing PCBs, buying the necessary parts, assembling the PCBs, CNC machining, 3D printing, even injection molding, all the way to final assembly. No matter how complex your project is, PCBWay has got you covered. When moving to night shots though, the story changes significantly. The iPhone 14 Pro Max is able to capture a lot more light, so it will consistently require you to hold steady for less in order to get a shot, always about 1 to 2 seconds less than the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and the color of the sky doesn't go weird like on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Although it doesn't bother me, it still makes the sky look unnaturally bright. Next up, the telephoto camera, as this has likely seen the most significant change between the two phones. Firstly, you get extra zoom, 3x compared to 2.5x. From these zoom shots you can see that you can get closer to the subject, but another thing you can quickly notice is how much duller the 12 Pro Max images are compared to the 14 Pro Max ones, where the details just pop, and this Hollywood shot is the perfect example. The bushes on the hills stand out, and the antennas on the top have plenty of details. In this shot you lose a lot of detail in the rock on the shaded side and also on the top side, which seems to be overexposed on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Moving on to trickier conditions, this post-sunset shot at the Grand Canyon pushes the telephoto on the 12 Pro Max to its limit, which can be seen when looking at the hill on the lower side of the image. The details look muffled on the 12, whereas everything is clear on the 14. This almost nighttime shot highlights the power of the 14 Pro Max, which continues to use the telephoto camera for the shot, whereas the iPhone 12 Pro Max kicks back to the main camera, resulting in a very noisy image. Now we're moving into extreme territory. Maximum digital zoom, which is something I used to never use because of horrible noise. In this first shot you can see how much cleaner the sky looks on the 14 Pro Max, and in the second shot you can see how in the 14 Pro Max image you can make out the logo of the airline on the tail, whereas on the 12 Pro Max you can't tell anything other than there's an airplane in the image. The ultra-wide camera has also seen some noteworthy improvements, starting with the 13 series iPhones already. It now has autofocus and macro capabilities. You can see from this shot how nicely the 14 focuses on the leaf while having some bokeh in the background. The 12 Pro Max on the other hand can't focus, meaning that the subject is blurred, with the leaves in the background and the building being in focus. Same as with the main camera, you can notice in this image that the ultra-wide also has warmer colors, but another improvement is the much better dynamic range. In the 14 Pro Max image, you can see detail in the flowers in the lower right hand corner, whereas on the 12 is just too dark. Looking at the front facing camera, we can see a bit more detail on my face, and the colors are closer to reality in the iPhone 14 Pro Max image. Moving on to video with the main camera and the telephoto, the most noticeable difference for me is the transition from the main camera to the telephoto being smoother on the 14 Pro Max. iPhones have always filmed exceptionally well, and this new generation iPhone is no exception. The optical stabilization on both lenses does a great job of smoothing out even my fairly shaky hands. If you were to really look into detail, like in this freeze frame, you can see that the telephoto on the 14 manages to capture more light in the dark areas, but this is really barely noticeable. Taking a look at the ultra-wide camera, the only difference I can see is that the footage is better stabilized on the 14 Pro Max thanks to the optical image stabilization while walking. In this video you can see the difference between completely zoomed out and max zoom in. Notice also how the transitions are slightly delayed on the 14, which makes them smoother. Alright, I hope you have a pretty good idea of the differences between the two cameras by now. As a backdrop, I've chosen some of my favorite shots with the 12 Pro Max and the 14 Pro Max to highlight that we've gotten to the point that the difference even between iPhones 2 generations apart have gotten small enough that you only notice them in specific areas. Just 3 to 4 years ago, you could tell the difference between different gen iPhones in every photo, but that's not the case anymore. I'm really happy with the camera on the 14 Pro Max, and I appreciate the upgrades a lot, especially as I tend to take a lot of telephoto shots, but I'm glad we've gotten to the point where the gear is not a limiting factor anymore. We've got our phones in our pockets every time, and in the past few years I haven't found myself wishing I had a DSLR anymore, which is great. Thanks guys for watching. If you want to buy either phone, there will be links to Amazon in the description. Make sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any future videos.